I am not going to let you know if I'm wearing pants. Hello, everyone. Bront, CatHerder here. We're having some fun talking Raid Shadow Legends, and we are here on the free-to-play to talk about what to wear. And no, we're not talking about what I'm wearing or not. Wink, wink. And we are going to be having some fun talking about gearing champions. So I figured I was going to do a guide, an updated guide. I've done this once before, but I think it's kind of nice to revisit this sort of stuff in general on how to gear champions and how I go about gearing champions. And I decided I was going to do, okay, we've got 3 different types of champions. And then I was like, well, maybe I should talk about the early game and maybe I should talk about the late game. And the video got so big that I decided I'm going to break this up into 2, maybe 3 videos. We'll certainly see how this goes, but we're going to start here on the free to pause account, and we're going to talk about how to gear champions early on. Specifically, what I look for when I gear specific types of champions, some of the things that I go through, and kind of the early game progression of how a build progresses from very early to a getting into the mid game, maybe even the late game build. Because honestly, even on an early game account, it's never too early to start looking at where you want to be with any particular champion build, particularly because if you can get there, it will help your account immensely. So first of all, there are 3 types of champions that are the most common champions you're going to find in Raid. There are all kinds of champions that are outliers to some of this advice I'm going to give. Do keep that in mind. And I can't cover every single one of them. That's just going to take forever and it's going to be confusing. We're going to talk about damage dealers. We're going to talk about support debuffers, and we're going to talk about non-debuff supports. So we're going to talk about damage dealers first, and I realize that there is a variety of damage dealers that do need accuracy and a variety that don't. So we'll talk about that within context of building those champions. And then we'll talking about debuff supports, and then we'll talk about non-debuff supports. So here we are on Durandil. Durandil is a damage dealer. So very, very early on, your direct damage dealing champions, you want to focus on getting your crit rate to 100%. So you'll see here, I've got the crit rate to 100%. In fact, it's actually way over because that's just kind of the gear that I had at the moment for building a Durandil. How do you get to that 100% crit rate? Well, most likely you're going to want crit rate gloves. So, crit damage gloves would be great. And I've done a video on why crit damage gloves are better than attack gloves and why crit damage gloves are so good. But the basic upshot of that is crit damage gloves give you 80% crit damage versus crit rate gloves giving you only 60% crit rate. It is easier to make up the crit rate, which you only need 100 of in the other substats, than it is to make up the crit damage, which you also get at the same rate in substats versus the glove where you get more of it. So that's the easy peasy version of why you want to do eventually crit damage over crit rate. So early on though, you're going to want to get crit rate for your damage dealers. You're going to want to pump up their crit damage because crit damage does multiply your damage more than any other stat does. And then you're also going to want to increase whatever damage dealing stat they're on. So for example, Durandil is a attack based damage dealer. So we are looking to improve his attack, which means we're using attack chests, and generally because you're going to want to get your damage dealers to at least 200 speed, you're probably going to want speed boots. Now, if you have enough speed to get champions over 200 to 250 speed with percent stat boots, then great. For damage dealers, it's one of the few champions where it does make some sense to do that sometimes. Keep in mind, however, that the way the speed meta has been going, it is actually really hard to have a champion you choose to be 20 to 40 speed slower than somebody else just because you want to get a little extra damage. So the way damage scales, it makes more sense to focus on good substats and get all the speed you can than it does necessarily to get all of the extra attack. So keep that in mind. But yeah, so you're going to start off with any set that you can get that gets you all the crit rate you need and then starts getting you crit damage and other stats. Then the next little graduation you kind of want to move towards is you start to want to do some ignore defense. So you notice here, I've got him in lethal gear right here. Lethal ignores 25% of the enemy's defense. Why do you want to ignore defense? Well, the way enemy defense works is enemy defense is a flat damage reduction, and removing 25% of the enemy's defense means effectively they are getting 25% less of that damage reduction. Now, it is on a bit of a sliding scale, so it doesn't always mean that you're getting 25% less damage reduction, but it means you're getting less damage reduction in general, and as a result, that means you're doing more damage. So it's one of the easier ways to do more damage, and since it works off of the enemy's defense, which continue to scale up pretty high, especially in PvE, for later game PvE and for PvP, it really is the best way to go. So you want to get them in some of these Savage sets, for example, or Lethal, or even just Cruel. Getting a little bit of Cruel gear on there is 5% here, maybe 10% if you get 2 sets. Certainly you'd rather have a 4-piece of Lethal, but if you can do 4 pieces of Cruel, it's at least ignoring some defense, not horrible, and if it gets you the stats you're looking for, you could certainly do worse than that as well. And then finally, you're eventually going to want to move your damage dealers into crit damage gloves. And for example, on this account here, I don't have a lot of champions in crit damage gloves, but I did manage to actually get Morag in crit damage gloves here. And as you can see here, my Morag has got 230% crit damage, whereas my Durandil does not. My Durandil, however, happens to be in Lethal, but he only has 160 crit damage here. And it you know, you could lose a little bit of crit damage by moving into this, but do keep in mind that every 5% of ignored defense is worth about 15% crit damage. So I've got 25% ignore there. So we're talking additional 75% crit damage effectively on Durandil as far as the way the damage numbers tend to work out. And then finally, of course, I've got, you know, my Alice here. I've got her in Savage. If I could do Savage and Cruel, that would be great because that's an extra 5%. She has, of course, a bunch of crit damage because she's got the huge blessing, and I've got some better gear on her than I do on my Durandil. My Monkey is doing fairly well as well, and these two bring up good options as well. Generally, if you don't have somebody you care about the debuffs on, so like Durandil has a freeze on his A1, and that's his only debuff. So if I really wish that this was a better banner for him, this would be an attack banner. If I had an attack banner, that would certainly help. But the fact that this gives him additional speed because it's pinpoint, that's kind of why he has it on there. But eventually, getting an attack banner here would be great. If I even have an attack banner, that might be why I don't have one. This attack banner, not that good, doesn't even have attack percentage, and this gives me speed. Therefore, the pinpoint one is a better banner for Durandil at the moment. But if you need accuracy, like you might on the Monkey, well, that's where you're going to be using an accuracy banner instead. You still want your substats to be represented in there if you can. This is a very good banner for a 5-star, and I realize I've kind of been in the way for all this stuff, but hey, we're still talking, and I'm showing to the numbers, so this hasn't been too bad. There we go. So hopefully I haven't been in the way of talking too much stuff here, but we've got, you know, these are the numbers that you're looking for in an accuracy banner for a particular champion. So you see you've got the attack here and the flat attack, and don't sleep on flat attack. It's not the greatest, but a little bit of flat attack on an attack-based champion is still more damage, and it's better than, say, flat defense or flat HP on a lot of these champions for an attack-based champion, for example. So, and that's where maybe something like a perception set might be very helpful. You get the extra accuracy there. And again, you'll notice my speeds here. I've got enough speed of the Monkey to make him viable. He's got speed boots right here. These are great speed boots. And I've got him on this account here. I've got him almost 210 speed, a little over 200 accuracy. The accuracy is a little low, but overall this build let me get him in the stuff I wanted to get him in. Crit rate gloves as well. So that's kind of how you build your nukers. You're going to want to go with crit rate or crit damage gloves, and you're eventually going to want to get them in Savage, and you're eventually going to want to get them in crit damage. And Savage is not specifically Savage, but any set that ignores defense. And that's generally how you're going to build a traditional nuker very early on. But before you watch the video any further, did you know you can use the link down below and start a brand new raid account and get 2 amazing epics? You can get Rector Drath. You'll get her right from the start, right after the tutorial. And once at level 15, you will get yourself an Ugo. Rector Drath is an amazing support reviver. She will heal your team. She will give you perfect veils to protect you. She will throw decrease attack up there. And she has a revive, making it very easy to get through in the early game. And then on top of that, Ugo, you get at level 15 again, is a wonderful support champion. She does decreased defense, she does block buffs, she does healing, she does cleansing. She is an absolute great champion. Very helpful early game, very helpful in end game. They are very good champions in Hydra. They are very good champions all over the game. I use them regularly on every account that I work on. They are great champions and you can get them for free. But not only that, But in the first 72 hours of your account, you can use code Monkey King to get Sun Wukong, or you can use Supreme 6 to get yourself a Supreme Gallic. Both are amazing legendary. Supreme 6 is a void legendary, so go for Gallic, I suspect. But you know what? Either one of them is absolutely amazing. Start a brand new account today. The steps are very easy. Log out of your Polarium Play account on PC or simply uninstall Polarium Play. Create a brand new account using the link. Download from there, run the install. It'll start up Polarium Play, and boom, there's your new account. If you are on Android or iOS, if you've never played before, you can download using my link and get the same benefits as well. It is an absolutely amazing way to start a brand new account, be it a free-to-play, be it a high-spend account, whatever you want to do. It helps support me, it helps get you into the game, and it's a great way to have some fun. Now let's get back to the video. So next up, we're going to talk about debuff supports, and a debuff support can certainly talk about a debuff damage dealer, like Geomancer here, who is a damage dealing support. I call him a support even though he's an attack-based champion, because he works very similar to how an Ugo would work as far as how you might build them. And basically, what you're looking for a lot of these supports is if they can do damage, you certainly don't mind building them with some crit rate. Like I know Ugo can actually do a little bit of damage if I built her with some crit rate. But if they don't, or you're worried about survivability, you're probably looking for defense or HP gloves, and you're looking for defense or HP chest plates, unless you're struggling to get the accuracy, at which point in time an accuracy chest is absolutely fine. But that's really kind of the key component you're looking for debuffers. You are looking to get them to a reasonable amount of accuracy. So like look down here, my Ugo is at almost 400 accuracy on my free to play. I've actually probably gone overkill because there's really almost nothing that needs that much accuracy that I'm capable of doing on this account. But it ended up playing well because, again, of the pinpoint gear that gives me some extra accuracy, as well as a wonderful accuracy banner here as well. Generally, you're going to be looking for enough accuracy to land your debuffs, and probably not too much more. So I could certainly swap off this banner for something else if this didn't also have a bunch of speed and a bunch of other good stats, plus being a revenge banner gives me occasional chance to counterattack as well. So this banner is just kind of hard to remove from this particular champion here, but we can certainly look at building accuracy, building speed, because you want these debuffers to go often and early. You traditionally want your debuffers to go and your buffers to go before your damage dealers go. And if you're looking for your damage dealers to be at least 200 speed, you're probably looking for your support champions to be faster than like 220, 230, 240. So yeah, the build is not particularly hard for a support. You're looking for survivability if you can. Mixing defense and HP is generally some of the best way in PvE for survivability. For PvP, HP tends to be a slightly more prioritized stat, but you do not want to ignore defense entirely, just because while some damage dealers will be ignoring defense, like I was talking earlier with the damage, not all of them are. And even if they are ignoring some defense, having some defense still gives you some level of damage reduction. So speed and accuracy are really kind of the two key points. And after that, it's going to be survivability or building in some damage because they happen to do a decent amount of damage as well. So that's going to be how you want to construct some of those guys early. Lots of speed, lots of accuracy. The sets are probably not going to matter early on. The sets become more important later on because in their cases, sets become stats. So you'll see Ugo here, I've got speed. In fact, you can see I've got speed set here. I've got feral set here for some additional accuracy. I've got pinpoint here for some additional accuracy and speed. And of course, the speed set gives me a bunch of extra speed as well. That all works out to me getting a bunch of extra speed from artifacts, getting her to that 236 speed right here. That is very, very important for your debuffers to be able to go first, to be able to go often, because going fast both gets the debuffs out and lets them cycle back to their abilities faster so they can get them out again. And that's particularly useful in long fights like Hydra. Now, for supports that don't do a lot of debuffing, well, you don't need a lot of accuracy for them. And this doesn't mean that they don't necessarily have debuffs. It generally means that you've given up on using the debuffs because either you don't like the debuffs that they have, or you just don't find that they're going to be useful in the gameplay with the champion because their support's going to be more important. And that means you're going to build a champion like how I've got Yuzan built right here. Now, this is not a great build. Don't take me over the coals for this one because Yuzan is still getting a lot of work done. He's only 4 stars, but You're going to, again, you want speed, again, more speed than what I probably have here, and you're going to want tankiness. So you're going to be wanting HP percent or defense percent here on the gloves and on the chest. You're also going to want a banner that's probably going to be HP or defense. You're going to want an amulet that's probably HP or defense. Now, I generally find that supports that don't do debuffs are some of the ones that I will often end up putting some resistance on, because they're often the ones that have your cleanses or your block debuffs or other things where the control can be problematic if you let them get controlled. So early on, probably not the greatest strategy. Later on, you're certainly going to put some resistance on some of these champions as well. Good sets for them are things like regeneration set I have right here. It gives them some additional healing so that they can stay alive for that much longer. Particularly your healers and revivers, regeneration set is a lifesaver, literally. Immortal set gives you a lesser version of this with some additional HP as well. So don't overlook that as an interesting off-piece set. So, you don't have a full set of 4 pieces of regeneration. Well, 2 immortal gear is certainly better than nothing. Not amazing, but it certainly is better than nothing at keeping people alive. And you're pretty much looking for speed on every single one of these champions as well, because again, you're looking to put buffs out so you keep your team alive, or get healing to keep your team alive, or get revivals to keep your team alive. And you know what? If you're not taking the turns, you're not keeping your team alive because you're not providing those benefits to your team. So that's where the regeneration comes in, and that's where the speed comes in. So you kind of want to push for those. Again, you're looking for over 200 speed. You're probably looking for 225, maybe a little faster for some of your regular use champions. And whether or not they need to be faster than your debuffers will really depend on what kind of buffers and support champions you have. Champions that do some speed boosting, well, oftentimes it's easier to get them faster. They're going to want a ton of speed, so much so that you might give up other stats to get that extra speed. Like, for example, an Arbiter build you might actually have. Arbiter needs to be fast because that's all her kit is, and that's what she is about. So you might make some additional compromises on a particular piece of gear to get extra speed on a champion that needs the speed to do what they need to do. I didn't even realize I have 4 quad roll on that either. That's awesome. So that can be very good versus, say, a Silva Drakes, as an example of an early game champion that was very good to build. You're going to want to build her very fast. You don't mind accuracy on her because she does have the stuns. In fact, you'd like to build accuracy on her. But if you can't build accuracy on her, it's going to be HP and defense and speed, and maybe in Relentless set, because Relentless set will keep everyone alive as well. So that's kind of how you want to build your non-debuffing supports. And because they don't need accuracy, this is where you can lean into the speed a little bit more, or the HP a little bit more, or the resistance a little bit more without sacrificing anything else, because it's not like a champion that needs accuracy and resistance and speed and crit damage. And you start adding more and more stats a champion needs, it becomes that much harder to build a champion. So that's really kind of the goal for the overall thing, is to kind of understand which stats are the most important for which type of champion. If they need debuffs, they 100% need accuracy. Are they doing damage? You want that crit rate or crit damage. Are they going to be, do you need to be fast? Well, in most cases, you always want them to be fast, but do you need them to be faster than your other champions? Well, then you're going to need to focus on speed a little bit. And do you want them to be able to resist the enemy debuffing? Well, then that's where resistance is going to come in. And that's kind of overall how you're going to build champions early. Are the sets going to make a huge difference? Well, yes, but stats over sets is generally going to be the role of an early game account. Once you're into the mid-ish game, like where this account is, I start paying attention to sets quite a bit more, but a lot of that still has to do with the fact that sets like speed or feral or pinpoint provide me with the extra stats I'm looking for. Here's an extra 20% accuracy and 10% extra speed, an extra 40 accuracy and 5% speed, an extra 12% speed. Those are so huge on an Arbiter that needs speed. So those sets are going to be great for her. Sets that might be great for somebody that is not her, for example, might be a protection set. Protection set will give you bonuses to having debuffs out, will help you do additional damage by you having more buffs out there, and it makes for a wonderful way to protect them as well. So what happens is you can't get them stripped or stolen or otherwise. This can be both in arena and not arena. So protection set's a great way to eventually move on to, but honestly, protection set's probably more of a mid-game to end-game role. So we'll talk about that in maybe another video. There you go. Hopefully I was not in the way for a lot of it, but there was a lot of good content on how to build champions, what you should be looking for in champions. And again, for very, very early on, you want stats over sets, but do keep in mind that some sets make getting certain stats significantly easier. And if you can play into those, that helps quite a bit. In fact, I would recommend checking out some of my gear videos as well. If I can remember to, I will link one of the gear videos right up above right here, or maybe at the end of this video as well. And check that out and look and see what kind of sets and gear you're looking for with the substats that'll be helpful for you on that particular piece of gear. So I appreciate hanging out. Hopefully this was interesting and educational. Much love, everyone. Hit that like button and hit that subscribe button. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Again, thank you for all the support. And until the next video, I'm Bront CatHerder.